Alderman Rummel.
Here.
Alderman Tack.
Here.
Alderman Reisenberg.
Here.
Alderman Moreno.
Here.
Alderman Bushman.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Please all rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is comments by the mayor, and I'm going to start with introduction of Fire Chief Pete Siebert. With two promotions and a swearing in of an officer, always good to see professional and personal growth reflected. So, Chief.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of the audience, residents and visitors here tonight. We're very pleased to be here and acknowledge these gentlemen's achievements. It's always good to be here in a positive light, you know, with so much of the news going on with pension issues and that. We like you guys to see the positive side of our department and put some faces to the name. So I'd like to start off with Corey Casimore and his wife, Kayla. Corey is being promoted from lieutenant to battalion chief. Corey came to us in January of 2005, so just about 12 and a half years. He has an accounting background, which has been very helpful. Most of the statistics you see up here, Corey's had some type of hand in. He had a lot of previous experience in 2 other fire departments, and he's going to be a great member of our management team.
Raise your right hand, please. I, Corey A. Casimir, do solemnly swear
I, Corey A. Casimir, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances, rules, and regulations of the City of Lake Forest.
the ordinances, rules, and regulations of the City of Lake Forest.
I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the Battalion Chief
of the Battalion Chief
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear
I further swear
to uphold the mission of the Lake Forest Fire Department
to uphold the mission of the Lake Forest Fire Department
and work to fulfill its vision to the best of my ability.
and work to fulfill its vision to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Take a picture.
All right, I guess we're on an assembly line here. The next gentleman I'd like to introduce is Matt Roush, with his wife Carrie, who's going to pin his badge on. Matt came to us in 2005 as well. I believe just turned 12 years here in June on the department. Matt has some experience from up north of the border, but we won't hold that against him. Matt's been an integral part of our organization. Any task we've given him, he's done it, and done it to, you know, above and beyond what you'd expect of him. So really great to see Matt get this jump to be from firefighter to lieutenant. So come on up and read your oath.
Come on down. Come forward a little bit. Please raise your right hand. I, Matthew C. Roush, do solemnly swear
I, Matthew C. Roush, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances, rules, and regulations of the City of Lake Forest.
rules and regulations of the City of Lake Forest.
I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of lieutenant
of the position of lieutenant
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear
I further swear
to uphold the mission of the Lake Forest Fire Department
to uphold the mission of the Lake Forest Fire Department
and work to fulfill its vision to the best of my ability.
and work to fulfill its vision to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Hey, Pete, I think we got to work on shortening that oath. It's starting to get out, you know.
That's right.
Last gentleman we're acknowledging tonight is Jacob Reaper. Jacob is just done with his probationary period, and his girlfriend Nicole is up here to pin him with his badge. Jacob came to us with past experience. He was did serve in the Army Reserve, which we're very proud of. He did work in Iowa as a firefighter paramedic, and came to us already trained at a high level and fit right in. It's a real testament to his skill and his professional manner. He just fit right in with the guys and has been going strong ever since. He's made me feel old because he's one of the few that now are older than or younger than my oldest child. So that's when you know you're old. But we're very proud of Jacob and glad to see him off of probation, and like to have you swear your oath in there.
Raise your right hand. I, Jacob A. Reaper, do solemnly swear
I, Jacob A. Reaper, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Illinois,
the Constitution and laws of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances,
and the ordinances,
rules, and regulations of the City of Lake Forest.
rules, and regulations of the City of Lake Forest.
I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of firefighter paramedic
of the position of firefighter paramedic
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
I further swear
I further swear
to uphold the mission of the Lake Forest Fire Department
to uphold the mission of the Lake Forest Fire Department
and work to fulfill its vision to the best of my ability.
and work to fulfill its vision to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
You guys have better memories. You guys have better memories. Another one.
Thank you, Chief. Outstanding group. Next item on the agenda is the 2018 Board and Commission appointments and reappointments. And we have a total of 3 tonight. First, at Gorton Community Center, the appointment of Nick Bothfeld and Bill Moskoff to the board. 2 very excellent appointments, in my view. Also, to the Building Review Board, Chris Byers. We'll need a motion to approve these appointments.
So moved. Second.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. Next item is approval of a resolution of appreciation for retiring members of boards and commissions as follows. From the Library Board, Elizabeth Grob, who was served for many years. And from Gorton Community Center Board, our own Jed Morris, who served well there in his financial capacity, now an alderman. A motion, please, to approve this resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next is the Lake Forest Day proclamation. Whereas the McKinlock Post 264 of the American Legion has undertaken to provide appropriate exercises and entertainment in celebration of Lake Forest Day on Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017, with a view to bringing together the people of our city in the furtherance of civic interest and advancement of community fellowship. And whereas the McKinlock Post 264 of the American Legion honors Lake Forest residents, employees, neighbors, and friends by adopting the theme, Lake Forest American Legion salutes Lake Forest open lands and Market Square for 2017. Therefore, be it hereby proclaimed that said Lake Forest Day celebration is declared to be a city fair, and in pursuance thereof, from Tuesday, August the 1st, 2017, and Wednesday, August the 2nd, 2017, shall be observed as holidays in the city of Lake Forest, and our people are urged to forsake their ordinary pursuits and gather in West Park in a spirit of comradeship and goodwill in support of the ideals of our fair city. Signed by Robert Lansing, Mayor. And I would ask John Centel, Chris Miller, and Bud Turner to come up and accept this proclamation. A wonderful Lake Forest tradition, and just gets better and better every year. Next is a proclamation for Historic Preservation Month. I'll read a proclamation here. Whereas since 1971, the National Trust for Historic Preservation has been celebrating a month-long observance of historic preservation, recognizing grassroots efforts across America to protect and preserve historic structures, places, and landscapes. Whereas the city of Lake Forest is one of the first communities in the Chicago region to take a role in historic preservation initiatives, including in 1975, Ragdale led the way when it became a national landmark. In 1976, the area of the 1857 plan of Lake Forest became the Lake Forest National Register Historic District. 1980, the Vine Oakwood Green Bay Road National Register Historic District was designated. 1995, the Green Bay Road National Register Historic District was designated. And in 2013, the West Park National Register Historic District was designated. Since 1976, numerous individual properties have been designated as National Register Historic Properties. Today, well over 1,200 structures and open spaces in Lake Forest are recorded in the city's inventory as being historically significant, and at least 35 areas and individual properties have received the city's landmark designation. Whereas in the mid-1990s, the city of Lake Forest officially recognized that its ability to safeguard its distinctive historic character and resources was being tested by development incompatible with the existing character of historic districts and homes, and therefore determined that public awareness of the importance of historic preservation was to be a high priority. Whereas in 1998, the City of Lake Forest, in response to this challenge, adopted a comprehensive plan that included strengthening its historic preservation efforts. The City Council created a Historic Preservation Commission, independent of the Building Review Board, attached a rider to all real estate transactions informing buyers of the importance of its ordinances and comprehensive plan in maintaining compatibility with community character, historic structures, and streetscapes, and undertook revision of its zoning and demolition processes, including amending zoning Chapter 51 entitled Historic Preservation. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Robert Lansing, Mayor of Lake Forest, do proclaim May 2017 to be National Historic Preservation Month and call upon all residents to honor the importance of historic preservation throughout our community. We look forward to continued coordination with the Lake Forest Preservation Foundation as it works with our city officials and residents to protect and preserve the historic visual character of this remarkable city. I'd ask Jim Opsitnik to step forward to accept this proclamation. That concludes the mayor's remarks. Comments by the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My first order of business is I will dismiss all the fire department personnel because I believe they have a party or two to go to.
Party or three.
While they're leaving, Susan Banks, can I ask you to please put up on the screen the ward? Whoops, you're way ahead of me. All right. First item is I wanted to just remind everybody in the community that this week we actually have 2 ward meetings taking place. We have the Ward 3 meeting that will be held on Wednesday, May 17th at the Gorton Community Center from 7 to 8:30. And on Thursday, we have the 4th Ward meeting taking place at Fire Station 2 on Telegraph Road, again from 7 to 8:30. So we hope that everyone will come. And certainly the first ward meeting last week was extremely well attended. And so we hope wards 3 and 4 will be as equally well attended. Next item is I'll invite Mr. Thomas to please come up and brief the City Council and the community on the South Beach Access Road and other environmental activity down there.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, staff would like to present a very brief update on our South Beach Access Road. As you're aware, this project has been in the making for the past 12 months. We've had a lot of dialogue with the Public Works Committee, the Finance Committee, and the City Council, and we wanted to bring to you this evening a quick update because we've had some movement, as they say, in various parts of the bluff over the past 2 or 3 weeks. The recent timeline, on May 1st, we noticed on the South Beach Access Road some additional slides, some additional movement. And from there, we brought out the contractual engineer from AECom, who surveyed both the south, the middle area, and the north as well. He came back with the recommendation after discussing it with his staff that the trees should be removed. Again, these trees are the same trees that will be removed in Labor Day when we begin the project. It's part of the project is to remove the trees, lower the road. But the trees themselves were adding additional weight and down pressure on the slope. So he said, if you want to try and save this road for the boating season, two things you need to do. Number one, reduce the weight by removing those trees now. Don't wait until Labor Day. And number two, cover it up and let's try and prevent as much rainwater from getting in as possible. So we did both of those items on May 8th and 9th. And then from this point forward, we will continue to monitor that area on a weekly basis to see if there is any movement. We feel pretty good that we've covered all significant areas from preventing it again from the additional rainwater. But this shows you the difference. This is the same area on the left, May 17th of 2016, and then on the right 1 year later. And you can see how much slide and how much movement. We were lucky it was a light winter, but still with the heavy rains that we received, primarily at the end of April, that is what caused this slide. So these are the pictures as it was, or as it is, last night. Those pictures were taken. So the trees are removed. We've placed tarps over those areas. Again, simply trying to prevent rainwater from entering and creating a shallow slide. Again, it's the first 10 plus feet of the area that is all fill. When the project, as it is being designed right now, but as construction begins, the project is going to be actually very straightforward in that we're going to remove that fill anywhere from 5 feet to 8 feet. So the road itself will be lowered anywhere from 5 to 8 feet based upon all the data and the coring that they've been doing over the past month. But they will essentially be tearing down the road rather than having an incline. There will also be an additional wall placed on the east side, about 150 feet worth. Again, across from that wall that was installed in 2011, we'll put a wall up about 150 feet, a lagging wall is what they refer to it as. The schedule, AECom has told us that their design should be completed on or about the 23rd of June. Myself, Bob Ells, our city engineer, will do an internal review of the design, the bidding documents. We'll put the project out to bid on the 29th, have it out to bid for 2 weeks, bid opening on the 13th of July. We'll bring the bids to the Public Works Committee for review on the 19th. Hopefully with a successful recommendation of City Council, we'll bring that forth on August 7th. We'll take the next 3 weeks to make sure we have all the contracts, all the bonds, insurance, everything set. The project will begin right after Labor Day. The road will be shut down completely. It'll also include replacing the water main, replacing the storm sewer, and then there is a small natural gas main that goes down to the pumping station that will need to be lowered as well. So all of this needs to happen from Labor Day to Thanksgiving so we can get that road resurfaced before Peter Baker closes his plant. That is the goal, the objective. As we move further north, this next area is just south of Spring Lane. There was some additional movement in that area, again, right around that May 1st timeline. It resulted in about 1.5 feet worth of a drop. Again, our engineer looked at that and he said, yes, it's a shallow slide. Yes, they said that's the area that we thought it was going to be in. And he said, I hate telling you this, but it's the same thing. You've got to get the weight off of it. So we went ahead and that large tree on the left, silver maple, we had to remove. The nervous thing from our standpoint was that it was at such an angle and at least a third, if not half, that root ball was exposed. If that thing would have fallen, it would have hit the walkway going down to the beach. So we needed to remove that quickly. So we have done that. We are monitoring that. The engineers are going to be putting in some inclinometers that will actually measure how much of a shift occurs over time. That again is part of the contract that City Council approved this spring. That is how it looks today without a tree, but you can again see some of the movement. Finally, on the north end. The north end, again, around the same time period at the beginning of May, end of April, a good amount of rainwater. These pictures, 3 of them are of the property that is north of the North Beach Access Road, private property. Excuse me, they submitted plans today to begin a repair, but we are going to work with them so our project to repair that ravine can be in conjunction with their engineering firm as well. But you can see our picture is on the top left with the storm sewer that was dislocated, and some of the gabion baskets were dislodged as well. So this project is under design. We are working and will be working with the Army Corps of Engineers because this part is considered a U.S. waterways, so we need to receive a permit from Army Corps. That is what is going to take a while. The design is very straightforward, but working through that process over the fall and winter will take some time. So we're working on that. We'll be budgeting that for next year. We'll go ahead and put that together and do that repair work next summer. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I also left for you background material that the work group study, the work group analysis, work group, I should say, put together over the winter months and has a good amount of detail on the proposed design, the options that were reviewed, et cetera.
Do we know why this is happening now? Has it happened in the past? I mean, I see for the past couple of years, but why, you know, those roads have been there for a very long time without this problem, so.
In speaking to our engineers, they said it's something that was going to occur naturally. When they redid the beach in '86 and '87, that road was reconstructed. So it was at a much steeper angle prior to that. They reconstructed that road, they brought fill in, compacted it, and it did last 30 years. The compaction lasted, but with the amount of rainwater, our engineers simply said this was something that was going to happen, and it has started.
Well, and then my other question is, should we limit the weight of boats going down that South Beach access?
We asked them that question specifically, and they said, no, we did not need to, that we need to monitor it. But the road is sitting on the fill right now, which is stable. Again, the slide is just to the east of that. And again, if the slide becomes so significant where that back of the curb begins to bend, or we start seeing the road moving, you're absolutely correct. We will close the road. But as of right now, the road has held up. It's in good condition. We are keeping one lane closed to try and keep weight off of it. And they said that's a smart move on our part as well. But Sally Swarthout, the Director of Parks and Rec, she's going to be working with her staff over the summer to have people up top and up at the bottom to make sure boaters are safe going up and down.
And then I have another question, having my own yacht, my 16-foot kayak down there. Are we giving notice to all of the boat permit owners that they won't be able to, it looks like it's going to be closed at Labor Day, is that accurate?
Yes, that is true. We will be giving notice to them. And is Sally here? Where's Sally?
No.
I don't know if you have anything else to add, Sally, on that or not, but they will be notified. That's it?
That's it.
Okay.
Mike,
Yes.
when you cut the trees, it was just simply at the base, leaving the roots structure remain in there?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And again, that was based upon the advisement from our engineer, because we asked them that specific question, saying, would it be smart to pull out or to grind those bases? And they said, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Leave the
somehow
root
you
balls
think
in,
that
leave
may
the
hold
roots in.
that soil better
Correct.
together by leaving the root structure there.
Correct.
I have a question for you, Mike. Could you talk about, through this project, with the wall going up and the cut east of the wall, water management? Do we have to do anything special? I know the road will have its own water management drainage system, but what about along the wall and on the cut? Do we have to do anything to manage water flow there?
At this time, they have not told us that we have to do that. Yes, there will be a new storm sewer installed. It's going to be larger than the one that is there now. Their big emphasis is the angle. Right now, there's a good part of that is at a 1-to-1, and they said at a minimum, we've got to have a 2-to-1. And they said, you know, we're going to work at trying to get an even better slope that will then drain the water correctly and avoid the erosion. But other than that, no. They said there's nothing else to do with regards to the water management. Obviously, we want to be effective in catching all the water on the roadway and keeping it on the roadway, getting it in that storm sewer and getting it down to the base where the ravine is at. But barring that, no, there are no additional items for stormwater.
So we're removing the fill, which was the problem principally to begin with.
I'm sorry, when would we?
We are removing the fill that is the cause of this problem over
Correct.
20, 30 years.
Correct. So they have taken numerous cores, and there's different types and strengths of clay the further deeper they get. But the first 5 to 8 feet is all fill. It's CA6, it's grade 3 stone, it's clay, it's dirt that was compacted well, but it just has moved over time. And again, it was constructed to try and remove that severe pitch that they had from 86 prior.
I must say this all resonates. If you permit me to pull a memory from the archives, I served on the 1985 Shoreline Commission, and we were dealt a very difficult deck of cards there because the lake had risen quite a lot. And in fact, when we started construction, that June of 86, was it, I think? The first row of trees was coming down at the bottom of the bluff, the entire length of the beach. Every square inch of horizontal surface down there is man-placed. Only 14,400 long-body dump trucks worth of material. The North Beach access road, you know how you go down, then you take that hard turn to the right? When you took that hard turn, there's a curve. It was literally vertical, about 35 or 40 feet down. The whole road structure was about to fall. And on the south end, we had similar problems. And that South Beach access road, which we're talking about tonight, is literally a road that was originally in place just straight down the nose of some clay silt. So in trying to improve the slope of the road, redo the bluff and put the walks in and restore the support for the North Beach access road, it's all man-made, all in place, trying to get it to 2-to-1. 3-to-1 would be great, but we just really didn't have the space to do it. And it was always said, this stuff is going to move around over time, including the barrier islands, which have been moving a little bit, but we're doing okay there. So Mother Nature is very dynamic, and this is just something we're going to face every once in a while. So.
Correct. The two options were presented to the work group. One had a lagging wall, sheet pile wall running the entire east side of the road. That was approximately $1.8, $1.9 million. The option that the work group then recommended to the city manager and ultimately the finance committee has the road being reduced 5 to 8 feet, again, taking out that fill, but getting down to those solid clays. Again, in the transition area, there will be about 150 feet of wall, but again, they need that for a transition, and there's going to be a lot of semis coming out of there and heading down Deer Path. There's going to be a lot of material.
Thank you. Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
If I could, I will email you both presentations. The paper copy, I apologize, some of the pictures didn't print, so I will email both of those to you.
Great, thank you. Under in the next agenda item, under the leadership of Lake Forest College President Steve Scott and former Mayor Don Schoenheider, we created what we called the Founders Council, which is a group of representatives from the city and the college to work on strengthening relationships between the college and the city, and been very active and productive over the last couple of years. And this evening, we're pleased to have a representative of Lake Forest College, Mary Duckworth, here to talk about an interesting program that they're starting up at the college. And I believe that maybe one or more aldermen have already registered for the program. So after Mary's done, maybe we can ask them to tell us about the program from their perspective. So Mary?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for making time for me to speak this evening. I am here to talk about our Home for Dinner program. It is, as was mentioned, a new program that we're looking to build more, strengthen the bonds between the college and the city of Lake Forest. Our goals are to introduce 30 to 40 new incoming students to connect them with a Lake Forest family for a series of dinners over their first year at the college. So having an established date in September where we are connecting these families and these students. Sunday night, they're going to come for dinner to their homes. These families are opening their homes to these students, which we're very excited about. The goal is to grow this program so that all first-year students will have the opportunity to participate in it in the future. But our first year, we are starting with that 30 to 40 range and looking for 15 to 20 families in the Lake Forest city. And we are very excited to be at that number. We're in the process of finishing up the applications, making sure everyone just understands what we're asking for, that there's a good understanding of the commitment of time and potentially resources, again, of inviting students into their home. We're doing the same with the students. We're currently recruiting our incoming class. Our commitment date was May 1st, so we've been hitting them hard and getting them excited about coming to Lake Forest as a city as well as the college.
I don't know. I think Prue or Jed, you guys have already registered. Is that right?
Well, Kathy Waldeck, when I was picking up the alderman position, Kathy said, "Oh, by the way, being in the first ward, you need to sign up for this." So I did. And so we're signing up for the fall. It has not started officially, but I'm looking forward to an update because any way we can get the college more involved with the city and the other residents in the city is going to be very helpful, very healthy. So
Kathy gave me the same pitch.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to do it, and I'm very much looking forward to hosting some dinners with college.
Wonderful. And I believe, will you be joining our group?
I know I'm going to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes.
Yeah. No, I know. And I think I'm coming to a meeting tomorrow to talk through some of it and so on. Let me just ask you the question. Kathy and I were talking about this earlier today. Is there room for additional people to join if they? I know that I think the 20 have been achieved of the pilot program, but would it be a problem if we went over?
Well, not necessarily a problem. I think it might depend a little bit on our student responses first year and making sure we have enough. I think that we'll continue to take names and have them in the pipeline.
That was what I was hoping you'd say. So,
yeah.
Because clearly the program could go on in the future and so on.
Yes, we hope to build some excitement so that in future years, the families participating, we think will be the best ambassadors of this program and hopefully the great impact that they feel like they're having on these students.
Yeah, good.
I would just say, Mary, if you end up having more families and students, I'm happy to help out. I'll go to dinner Sunday night.
I was thinking the same thing.
Me too.
Free dinner on Sunday night sounds pretty good to me.
Can you cook?
No, I can do dishes, though. So thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you all.
The next item on the agenda is our community spotlight, and we're very fortunate this evening to have what some would refer to as our Western jewel, which is Elua Farms. And with us this evening is the president of the Elua Foundation, Diane Fitzsimons. Diane, welcome.
Okay, right there. Okay, Mike is just giving some instructions on how to make this happen. Thank you very much for letting me be here and for the opportunity to highlight Elua Farm. This year is their
Hey, Diane, can you tip that down? There you go, so people can hear you at home.
Oh, couldn't hear me.
That's right.
At home. Anyway, this year is the centennial year for Elua Farm. And so I am very happy to be able to be here and talk about the good things that are happening at Elua. And as you can see, it's up there. The first slide is the Elua Farm mission statement. Elua Farm, a restored gentleman's farm and garden, enriches our community as a unique center for hands-on learning and inspires an appreciation for gardening, healthy living, and historic preservation. We put a lot of thought into our mission statement, and we really use it as the heart of almost every decision that we make. It's important to us. Now, I want to give you just a little bit of history and context about Ellowa. And I have to click something to make it work. Oh, there I did. As you can see, Ellowa was named after Elsa and A. Watson Armour, is where the name Ellowa came from. And 100 years ago, in 1917, the Great War was raging in Europe. Chicago was growing and a thriving city. And Carl Sandburg immortalized the city in his Chicago poems, calling it the hog butcher to the world. Also in 1917, a prominent Chicago businessman, A. Watson Armour, whose family was hog butchering, moved his wife and family into their new summer home, Ellowa Farm, right here in Lake Forest. The farm buildings were designed in the Georgian colonial revival style by noted architect Alfred Hopkins. David Adler was involved in designing the coach houses. Whoops, I went the wrong way. There we go, sort of. Mike? There, okay, I figured it out, thank you. David Adler was involved in designing the coach houses, and other buildings included the chicken coop, a silo, 2 greenhouses, and numerous outbuildings. The landscape architect, Ralph Rodney Root, designed and laid out an extensive formal garden, which included flowers, vegetables, a fruit orchard. And it must have been, am I going to do this right again? There. It must have been a delight for the family to leave the bustling but dirty city to come to the beautiful pastoral property at the edge of the Oak Savannah. It was a gentleman's farm where gentlemen could pursue a hobby of learning and experimenting with agriculture and animal husbandry. And it is, I'm told, the only intact gentleman's farm left in the Midwest, perhaps even throughout the country. So moving forward in 1998, when after only 2 owners, the Armours and the Carrolls, the city of Lake Forest bought the property. And a group of caring Lake Forest citizens volunteered to form the Ellowa Farm Foundation. And together with the city, by the year 2002, they raised enough money to start the restoration of the farm buildings. Another caring and hardy group volunteered to restore the garden. And that also the city of Lake Forest, around that time or a little bit later, named it one of the local landmarks. The Ellowa Farm is one of the local Lake Forest landmarks. Ellowa Farm was named for its original owners, and it is now celebrating its 100th year. Am I have the next slide? No, I keep going the wrong way. I'm sorry. This is the garden in somewhere early on, probably in about 1920. This is a picture of the garden in 1998 when it was purchased by the city, and there were people who said that there were trees coming through the roof. The garden is up here, which you can see is pretty much only buckthorn, and it was a thicket that was very difficult to get through. And the restored garden, which took some years to do, is here, and this is the garden today. The foundation, through the operating agreement, which is which is the city transferring the operations to the Ellowa Foundation, that was 3 years ago. And since that time, we're pretty proud of the way things have grown. Our revenues come from donations, rental of spaces, and from programs. And as you can see, oh, I didn't move the slide. As you can see, this is 2014 when we got, when the operating agreement moved over the operations to us. And then in 2016, the revenue grew to $230,000 in 3 years. So that, I think, is something that we are proud of. Having worked hard to make things happen. The revenue from rental only, and we do rent for weddings and meetings and parties and retreats and a lot of space rentals. And our revenue goes strictly to maintain the buildings, which is our city property, to maintain the buildings and the property and the garden. And the garden, of course, is sort of the heart of Ellowa at this point. And we have reached a bit of a limit with our rentals because we have some space constraints, but we are finding ways to do it, and our income has grown $58,000 in the last 3 years. And the program participants. This has grown tremendously. This has grown almost 1,000%. We started out in the early days with our programs where Gail Gann, the national known cook, chef, gave cooking classes at Ellowa. Sorry, didn't move again. I'm going backwards. I'm very sorry. Okay, there I am. This is program participants. Gail Gann gave cooking classes, and that was really our only programming. We now have cooking classes, yoga classes, flower arranging, gardening, and tips and techniques, children's programs, camp, healthy living, wellness, many programs. And again, people are discovering Ellowa and discovering the opportunities there. And so we are continuing to grow with good ideas. Now there we go, I did it. Volunteers. We obviously depend upon volunteers, and they come from all places. Lake Forest College, we have Lake Forest College students. I understand the football team was working in the garden. We have high school students doing their community service. Waukegan Youth Conservation Corps comes and works in the garden about once a week in different groups. We have community volunteers who work in the kitchen, in the garden, creating bouquets that are sold in the market, and volunteers who work in the market. And in 2016, we have 5,578 volunteer hours that were chalked up. And next, if I can do this the right way, there I did. The garden and the market. Now, the garden is pretty much the heart of Ellowa, and the market depends upon what happens in the garden. And this is the market, which is on Fridays and Saturdays in the morning from 8 o'clock until 1 o'clock, is really, in many cases, the main source of community exposure for Ellowa. It's their first contact, and people come, they love what they see, they love that they're getting vegetables and from the garden that are picked out of the garden and sold to them almost immediately. So everything is very, very fresh. We are the only organic local farm in the area. We grow beautiful flowers. People come from the bouquets. We have beehives and sell honey. And our garden market manager is Catherine Gregg, who works very hard with both volunteers and with the market and making things run smoothly. And we have a new chef this year, Amy Swartout. Our previous chef, Steve Trippetti, we sort of launched him into, now he has his own restaurant. So we have a new chef who is she loves the notion of garden to cooking, so she fits in beautifully, and her name is Amy Swartout. And our gardener, Erica Vernon, she came last year and did marvelous things in the garden. And if you have seen the garden, please do come and see the garden. It is perfect and beautiful and very, very productive. We also have a CSA program, which is Community Supported Agriculture, and that is new this year. And that you get every Friday. You can pick up a box of vegetables and fresh from the garden, and that goes on for the entire summer. Eagle Scout projects, and we have had a number of Eagle Scout projects, and we are in a good place for it. You can see this is restoring the root cellar door. This is a Purple Martin house built by an Eagle Scout. Here we have cold frames. That is compost bin. This is mason beehive, and I didn't know that mason bees pollinate vegetables, and that was built there, and then some shelves also for the root cellar. And wrong way. Some of our partnerships, and we have some really nice partnerships, and this one I like particularly. This is exceptional abilities, and these are some autistic young men who raise chickens. We buy their eggs, they use our vegetable scraps to feed the chickens, and it's just a very nice arrangement. It gives them a sense of doing something valuable and important. The Shields Township Food Pantry, every Saturday after the market closes, whatever is left over goes to the food pantry. Last year we gave 510 pounds of vegetables to the food pantry, and we also give them baked goods and whatever else is there. We have the Waukegan Youth Corps, and these are young adults who need something productive to do when they come and work in the garden on a weekly basis. And the Lake Forest Lake Bluff Historical Society this year has chosen Ellowa as their 2017 project. And there are large portable boards showing the history of Ellowa with photographs and text. And that will be, the exhibit is June, we will open the exhibit on June 16th with a party and celebration, so you all are welcome. Wrong way again. Ellowa Farm programs, that's what I want. Again, I've mentioned programs, but each year we have some new fresh ideas, and you can see we have yoga, we have photography, we have garden classes on gardening, cooking classes, flower arranging, summer, we have a summer camp, beboppers, which are 3-year-olds, 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds who sing and dance, and they're adorable to watch. Our Spooktacular, which is one of our annual very fun programs for children. And the greenhouse, which is new this year, we were able to do all of our starts from seed, which is the first time we've been able to do that, which is feels very rewarding, and it also saves quite a lot of money. I wish I knew which way to go each time. And our rentals. Rentals are a very good source of revenue. We rent for weddings. We rent for dinners and birthday parties and other celebrations, and we also do a number of corporate events, which team building, smaller events that can be done during the day, which don't interfere with the neighborhood. We do always use, the special use permit only allows us a limited number of large events, and we really don't want more large events out of consideration both for the neighborhood and also for the staff who have to manage the large events. So the smaller, quieter daytime events are things that we would really like to increase, and that is happening. I keep going the wrong way. And this, our annual events, which is the Farm to Table Feast, and you have pictures of that. We have in our Christmas holiday market with its signature gingerbread houses and trees and greens. We do Thanksgiving fresh turkeys and pies, which people come and pick up. All of those are popular and well received. And these are the events for the summer that we are doing to celebrate the centennial. We have, as I said, the June 16th is Ellowa Farm's 100th summer, and that's the centennial beginning with the Historical Society. We are going to be in the 4th of July parade. We are doing a family day on the farm, which is open to all for fun events for families and children. We have a presentation from the Lake Bluff Historical Society on gentlemen's farms, and that is a lecture and slides, and that's on the 26th of July. Then again, we will be in a parade. And on September 9th, Diamonds and Dahlias is what we are calling this year's what has always been feast, but this because it is a special event. It is the Diamonds and Dahlias. Diamonds is for the 100th anniversary, the Diamond Jubilee. And dahlias was the favorite plant, favorite flower of Elsa Armour, and she won many awards with that one. So we are naming them after those two, after the Diamonds and the Dahlias. And it is really an expanded version of our feast, our farm to table dinner that we have had every year, which is a very successful thing. And I do have, while we're talking about that, I do have 2 requests. One is in connection with the Diamonds and Dahlias. In connection with the September 9th party, we would like to accommodate as many people as we can to celebrate the culminating of the 100th year celebration. We usually always self-limit any event that happens at Ellowa to 200, but this is the one time we hope we can be allowed to have up to 300 guests. We have room for a large tent large enough to hold 300. All of the guests will be shuttled from a nearby parking lot, and in every other way, we will stay within the use of the special use permit guidelines. And I am told that the City Council needs to approve this, so I'm hoping that this one-time request could be granted. I do have another request, is that we would like to invite the City Council to a casual dinner and tour at Ellowa at a mutually agreed upon date and time, either in August or early September. And I will also say that although the property is 100 years old as a farm, The foundation and modern-day farm are only 15 years old, and really only 3 years old on our own, so we are still growing. But we are also so proud of how Ellewa is thriving and evolving into such a community treasure. And I am very proud of our hardworking and engaged board, as well as our hardworking staff who work, I think, overtime every single day. And I've mentioned some, and Joanne Miller, who is here, is another very hardworking staff member, executive director. Natalie Moore is our assistant director. So I just wanted to mention those. I also would like to introduce Courtney McGovern, who I think is here. Courtney, can you just stand up, please? Courtney McGovern, who is the great-granddaughter of A. Watson and Elsa Armour, who is on our board and was recently honored at the Historical Society's recognition of families that have lived in Lake Forest for 100 years or more. And Courtney is also a co-chair of the Centennial. So there are Armours still here working hard at Ellewa. Thank you very much. Please consider our request for possible 300 guests on September 9th and accept our invitation for dinner. And if you have questions or comments, let me know.
Diane, thank you very much. Very interesting. I was on council when we took this on as one of Lake Forest's many projects like Ragdale and Gorton and so forth, if you go back through the years. And there's a lot of hard work, of course, and a lot of hope. And it's wonderful to see the success of Ellewa, frankly, through all these years, along with the Wildlife Discovery Center. So good for Lake Forest. Very good for all the hard work that you and so many others have put in. So with regard to the request for the one-time expansion of the special use permit, any particular questions or comments?
I do. It's probably a Mike. We've gotten...
Alderman Reisenberg, could you just come forward a little so that people at home can hear you?
I'm sorry. We've gotten a lot of, for some of the newer aldermen, we've had a number of, a lot of pushback from the neighbors, sometimes to the point that this has gone from a community facility to a banquet facility with all the parking issues and whatever. So Mike, I'm curious, have we notified the homeowners association, and have we gotten any feedback from the homeowners association?
I should go.
Sure. Yes, Alderman Reinsberg, I've spoken directly with the president of the homeowners association regarding this request, and they did meet and discuss a couple things, and I believe Diane mentioned this. One, they would like to ensure there's adequate notification of all the neighbors. So should this move forward and should the request be granted, they'd like to see some sort of notification be sent out to the neighbors. They'd like the shuttling, of course, to be enforced. They'd like the time limits to be enforced. So I believe in the application was 11 p.m., which complies with the special use permit of the end times allowed on a Saturday. They'd also like to ensure that this really doesn't set a precedent. I think they're concerned about, letting this happen once and then happening again. They like to see that, enforced. But generally speaking, the president relayed to me that they were generally supportive of it, given these conditions.
Mike, are they going to hire a private security to manage people, traffic, caterers, other activities?
Diane is giving me a thumbs up, so I believe
I like that.
That there will be private security.
Okay, and will there be an end time?
Correct. 11 p.m. So I believe 10:30 is when they start pushing people out the door, which would be consistent with other events.
Right. I mean, I don't want to be a wet blanket, quite frankly, because I think this is a treasure to the community, but there has to be a better balance, quite frankly, between the homeowners and Ellewa. And I think at some point it would be good if we could revisit the special use permit to make sure that it's up to date. I mean, I think it was probably done, actually, I think I was the head of the Plan Commission when we did that. We were going to review it in 18 months. I don't think we ever got around to that. That's as much my fault as anybody else's fault, quite frankly. But I think it's time for a review and probably perhaps a representation of the special use permit through the Plan Commission up to here to make sure that balance is put back in place. Thanks.
Yeah, that seems a thoughtful suggestion. Clearly, going from a very low baseline, there's been quite a long evolution of further refining, defining the mission of Elliwa and the Wildlife Discovery Center, and they are now succeeding by various measures. But we need to go back and make sure that all the stakeholders are addressed and all their thoughts and concerns, because it was never the intent to create large cash-generating enterprises. On the other hand, they need to sustain themselves and sustain the property and so forth. So the balance needs to be struck, and I'm sure that can be worked out, because there's a lot of committed, capable, and fair-minded people involved.
I think, Mayor Lansing, the special use permit, it feels like we're talking about sort of two different ones, if I'm not mistaken. There's the one that operates on a regular basis and has since Elliwa was created. And then although apparently we don't make a final decision about this tonight, which seems to put you in a kind of a tough spot if you're needing to send out invitations and so on. I mean, this is a completely different deal. There's going to be I'm not quite clear where the tent is going to be. I could see the map of the tent. I just couldn't see any orientation that said north or south. Can you?
It's going to be west.
Okay.
It is west of where the market is.
Perfect. That's all I need to know. Okay. Okay.
And we can have a tent there.
And you've already figured that out. So I'm not at all worried about setting a precedent here. We're talking about a one-time occasion for an organization of high esteem. I like Jack's phrase, treasure. I think that describes it exactly. It's having a 100th birthday. Now, if they come to us at 150, my guess is we might say sure. But we're not talking about doing this, and even if we're every 10 years or something, but that's not even what we're talking about. We're talking about one shot here to celebrate a very distinguished property in town, and I say go for it. I'm concerned that we're going to, by not, I don't know when we are going to, if it's only for discussion tonight, when do we vote on this?
Well,
do we need to vote? I don't
No, what needs to happen is we needed direction from the city council, because it's been said, even though the staff has had conversations with them, the staff cannot violate the special use permit that's in place right now. Only the city council can grant that waiver. So if you give us the direction between now and June 5th, we will work out all the rest of the details, work with the city attorney to make sure that we have the formal action that the council will need to take at the June 5th meeting. But I'd like to think that if the council gives us direction this evening, that certainly the Elliwa Foundation has sort of the green light that they can get going starting tomorrow.
I mean, that's because that's only 3 months. From June 5th to September 9th is 3 months to do a major event. At some point, contractors need deposits. I mean, but if this is the timetable we've got, and so you're looking, okay, well, you've heard my sense of direction.
Let's move
I have
forward.
no idea. I'm not speaking for anyone but me.
Let's move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, is the sense of the council to...
I have just a couple of
Please, yeah.
questions. And again, I think that what you've done out at Elliwa is just spectacular, because I've sort of watched this progress from the time Mike was on the council, and great strides have been made, and so congratulations. My question, I guess, is when I read through the special use permit, and I focused on item number 9 and number 10 of the special use permit. Number 9 saying that for events in which alcohol is served, the service of alcohol must end an hour before the scheduled ending time of the event. So that's one item that's in the special use permit. And then when you get to 10, the event of amplified music or sound must end by 10:30. And I assume that's the amplified music, and that only 12 events with amplified music or sound shall be permitted per year, consistent with the original approval of the Middle Fork Farm development. And it goes on from there. So my question is, are those restrictions also going to apply to this event? And if not, perhaps they should, because they might give some reassurance to the neighbors
all part of it.
that we're, still complying with the special use permit, but making a special exception mostly as to number of invitees to this event.
Right.
May I just say, we do not intend to have amplified music at this event. There will be no amplified music. And as I said, we also intend to work within the guidelines of the special use permit there. And we're not going to ask for more. As I said, it's very difficult for staff to do a 200-person party or even a 50-person party. They have a lot of work to do. This is not a regular thing. This is a special event.
So would this be one of your 12 events for the year?
It's not an amplified event.
Right.
Okay.
And so we have 12, we get to have 12 amplified
I
events.
see.
That does not mean that we
And this is not
necessarily
one-
do, but that's.
one of those
It
12.
will not be amplified.
And how about the service of liquor? Would that be ending
We will end it,
an hour before the end of the event?
I was gonna say an hour or half an hour, but whatever the rules are, we will follow the rules.
Right, that was just my question,
Yeah,
was
okay,
whether
no, no.
we're kind of, superseding this whole special use permit, which I wasn't particularly comfortable in doing, or complying with the special use permit with just sort of the special exception as to numbers
numbers.
of invitees. So
Right.
that was my concern. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So if I hear the sense of the council, staff will work with the Elwell Foundation and city attorney, bring back the necessary formal action that you'll need to take at your June 5th meeting, and we'll plan accordingly and make sure that the neighbors are fully up to speed and understand what's going on, and then we'll all just pray for good weather.
Indeed. Yes, I think that's fair. There's a lot of responsible folks involved, so I'm sure the staff, working with everyone involved, will come up with the right answer.
Right. And I think to Alderman Reisenberg's question is that staff will also try and work between now and June 5th to come up with a schedule to address that master plan question that you did, so that hopefully that issue can get dealt with in 2017 as well. Okay. The final item I have, and Susan Banks, if I could ask your assistance to put up the other PowerPoint presentation. Not that one yet.
Oh, this.
The fiscal planning and presentation? Nope. Hopefully you got this one.
Oh, this is the metro. We don't have that.
Could be a PowerPoint. But maybe. Okay, well, if you don't have it, then, yeah, right. I know the city council is probably thinking that you just approved the FY18 budget. Why are we talking about the budget again? But as the staff knows, the budget never ends for us, and we're already starting to look down the road to the 2019 budget for the city of Lake Forest. But there's a couple of critical discussions that need to take place over the next 4 to 6 months. And we were wanting to sort of get a few of these things on your radar and address some of them. I know that Elizabeth Holub was polling the city council about a special city council meeting on June 19th to be a public safety pension primer. And also we will have the actuary there to talk about some of the actuarial assumptions that that we're looking at, or that he needs some direction from in order to prepare the actuary for the upcoming year. I know there's been a lot of conversation in the past about the pension obligations, and we can send out, for the new alderman, we can send out the PowerPoint presentations from past city council discussions on that. But I think one of the most important things that staff is working on now that we will have for the June 19th meeting is some information that talks about, if we were to cease our operations today, what are those pension obligations that we're already obligated for, and then what are those pension obligations going forward? So you can sort of see the mix, that even if you didn't make any other decisions going forward, here's sort of what you're on the hook for, and then if we make some other decisions and so forth, what would the impacts of those be? So That evening is just for pensions, and if you need any backup information prior, if you want us to send out old presentations, because I think Elizabeth's done some really nice work over the last couple of years putting some things together to explain sort of the city situation, we'd be happy to do that. Then at the July 17th City Council meeting, we're going to look for the City Council to help the staff create what we're calling what-if parameters or what-if scenarios. And this was brought up by the City Council in the budget meetings, is to develop some of these scenarios as to what would we do if this happened, or the state took this action, or the state took that action. And so Elizabeth and I have kicked around some ideas and using some Homeland Security threat levels. I think we'll come in with some different scenarios, but we want to make sure that we're focusing on what the council wants us to focus on. And then what we will do is, once we have the direction of the City Council, we will go ahead and prepare some of the different models and bring those back to the City Council probably in late August. Again, we might be looking for a special meeting of the City Council. Keep in mind, we usually only have the first meeting in August, but I think this might be a significant enough discussion, and depending on what and if the state ever does do with a budget, we might have some to implement some of these real-life what-if scenarios going forward. At the July Public Works Committee meeting, we're going to be presenting some information and some different options to the Public Works Committee on what to do with our fire equipment. This has been a topic of discussion that goes back a couple of years. The Fire Vision 2020 Committee had some discussions about equipment, but there has to be some decisions made, and I think we'll try and get the council's direction on what our long-range vehicle replacement program is for our fire department. We'll bring back, depending on how the discussion goes at the Public Works Committee in July, we'll bring those either to the council in August or September, depending on, you know, if we need to do some additional background work or not. And then, as I said, in late August, we'll have a special workshop meeting. We'll poll everybody here probably in the next couple of months, because we'll want to work around your summer vacation schedules, but look at a special night to talk about those fiscal stress parameters. And then finally, I just mentioned, and we talked about this during the budget meeting, is at your November meeting, you know, we always focus on capital. And at that meeting, we're also going to be bringing to you an asset management program. That's been something that we've talked about internally at the staff level, is really getting a good handle on sort of the total asset package that the city has, and whether, quite candidly, we're spending enough on those assets, be it roads or sewers or buildings or whatever the case might be, because we've been extremely fortunate over the last 20 years of able to secure outside funding for maintenance of roads and upgrades to buildings. And plus, we've also had, we saw another example here tonight with Elloa, we've had very generous residents step up and be able to donate and help renovate very valuable city assets that we have, and we're very fortunate for that. But we want to make sure that we have properly accounted for those future costs going forward into our long-range financial planning. So as you can see, there's a lot of work that needs to be done this summer, and I'd be happy to try and answer any questions now, or if you have any real hard questions, I'll ask Elizabeth to respond to those questions, and we'll see if we can hopefully get some of these issues addressed and resolved in 2017 and in advance of the FY19 budget.
Thank you. Bob, clearly the most strategic question before the city this year and probably for next several years is the pension challenge for all villages, towns, and cities, for which planning for appropriate expense reduction and where appropriate revenue adjustments need to be considered. Because I think, you know, a fiscally responsible body such as ourselves, which we pride ourselves in, has got to look at both sides of this. And expenses clearly is the usual first place to look. There's also things that can be done with revenue, but it certainly cannot be done on the back of either one of those two solely. So with that thought, comments, questions from the council? Michelle?
I think it would be helpful to, as we go, perhaps develop a framework for how we envision increasing revenue or decreasing cost by type, and kind of have I'll call it a dashboard of what we might think about. I'm sure that's part of this, because I know that we've kind of touched on this in the past. But I like the dashboard approach, because it kind of puts it all in front of you as you're driving, and then you can play with the levers. So just something to think about.
Well, for sure. You know, I have no doubt in the ability of the city staff or this council to take decisive and appropriate action. First of all, when we know what the state is going to do or not do with regard to some of these unfunded obligations that they're landing on the villages, towns, and cities of the state. The other is that, as a practical matter, having a dashboard and having it somewhat specified in a general way is useful. But I think it's very hard to make any specific recommendations and adopt any specific courses of action until we know the cards were dealt from Springfield. Because if for no other reason, we could take some missteps in either doing too much of something or too little, and as a result, really be caught out of step. So, all in good time, all in good measure, and I just would like to express, I think I can on behalf of the whole council and the city staff, to the citizens, there's nothing about this pension crisis that hasn't been thought about by the people sitting on this dais, or by the city staff, or the many, many observers around the state. And therefore, we expect no particular surprises at all about this. We're just, as Michelle is saying, you know, need to kind of think it through, think about some scenarios and alternatives. But I don't think we want to make, you know, specific rank order cuts of what we're going to do and so forth. Part of all this is we're going to have to look at how the provision of some services are done. Whether, you know, the city really is going to be in a position to afford it, or it's really going to have to become more of a taxpayer responsibility directly. And then there's all these intergovernmental cooperation questions being begged. You know, the nature of fire service protection and how it's undertaken. We're proscribed, we're limited by a lot of state law and regulation. But is that really going to, you know, be the sole thing that happens in the end about all this? Because I think the state's going to be put in a position where they're going to have to yield on some of these things. But I speculate here to a certain extent. But I only want everyone to know that we're very aware of this. A lot of people very knowledgeable on the subject have spent a lot of time thinking about it, and we will be prepared. So, Bob, I think this schedule and what we're basically talking about this once or twice a month for the rest of the fiscal year is a good stance to take. Any other thoughts, comments?
I agree with your assessment that we can't take action before we know what happens in Springfield. But my idea, or my sense here, is that we need to stress test our financial operations well in advance of any of the decisions that are being made. To Alderman Tack's point earlier, what if we looked at eliminating a professional fire department? We can certainly look at those outcomes now, even though we may not be in a position to make a decision about it. But if we wait until something happens in Springfield to start considering what the ramifications are, I think we're in trouble.
It's a whiteboard to be filled in. So everything's on the table. basically. Safety and security being job one has certain limits there, but all to be evaluated. Bob, any further questions?
Nope, that
or
completes,
thoughts?
and I'll actually forward tomorrow the actual schedule, so you'll have that. That completes my report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Next is consideration of an ordinance providing for the issuance of approximately $9,450,000 of general obligation bonds, Series 2017, for the purpose of financing certain capital improvements to the city's water treatment plant, providing for the levy and collection of a direct annual tax sufficient to pay the principal and interest on said bonds, and authorizing the sale of said bonds to the purchaser thereof. This is the second reading and possible final approval. Elizabeth Holland, Finance Director, please.
Thank you, Mayor Lansing. Good evening, City Council members. How about some good news? Sometimes you get lucky. And I'd say today is an example of that. 2 weeks ago, May 1st, the City Council approved first reading of the draft bond ordinance. These are bonds that will fund the planned improvements to the water plant. We talked 2 weeks ago, quickly, just background. This is the 5-year financial forecast of the Water Capital Fund. This has for several years slated a bond issue of $9.3 million in fiscal year 18 to fund the majority of the construction of the water plant. So I've just highlighted that. The construction, as you know, will be phased over 2 fiscal years, FY18 and FY19, but to save on bond issuance costs and to take advantage of interest rates now in a probably rising interest rate environment. We felt it was beneficial to go ahead and issue in one bond issue the full amount needed currently. And then we just hold those bond proceeds over the 2-year construction period. As we've discussed, we talked over several years, first at Public Works Committee and then at Finance Committee, how to best handle the financing of this bond. We have current debt in the water fund. That is on this graph in blue. There's current debt of about $2.2 million in the water fund. And so we felt to minimize the impact on water rates, it was most appropriate to issue the debt now with interest only for a few years. As you can see with the blue, that bond debt service is going to phase out in a few years. And so we could take advantage of that, take a few years with just interest only, and then as that debt matures and rolls off, then we could begin paying the principal on the new debt. And then we would only have a small impact over a few years. You can see in the first few years, just a small amount of interest on the new bonds, and just phase that in and take advantage with that structure and minimize the impact on water rates to the residents. So you can see too that the new debt service at the time was projected to run through FY 2037. We sent you an email last Thursday. We were waiting we talked about this on May 1st. We were waiting on a bond rating from Moody's Investor Service. They had done the rating call. They had not gone to rating committee, but they did come back with an opinion on Thursday, May 11th, and did issue a AAA rating on this bond issue and affirmed a AAA rating on the city's outstanding debt. So the city continues to hold a AAA rating. That is the highest rating available to debt. So that continues to be a good thing for the city, and does ensure that the city can receive both a very high interest in the bonds and the lowest interest rate. So that is a good thing as well. So the bonds went to sale at a competitive auction this morning. The online auction was hosted by the city's financial advisory firm, Spear Financial. We had 8 bidders competing for the bids. They, over the course of the online auction period, submitted a total of 38 total bids. So there was a lot of activity during that period, a lot of interest, lots of action on the auction. The successful bidder was Robert Baird. Due to the very good interest rate that was achieved with the low bid, the bond size was adjusted downward to $9,295,000. So we could adjust that because we were just seeking a net issue of $9.3 million, so we could adjust the size of the bond issue. The true interest cost on the successful bidder was 2.9495%. So that was fantastic interest rate. I was very pleased when we broke the 3% barrier during the auction. We had been working with an estimate in March of 3.6%. We saw that interest rates had gone down in 4% in April, so we knew that we were going to be lower, but we were very, very pleased to get below 3% on the successful bid today. So that was very, very good news. The coupon rates on the serial bonds over the course of the maturities start out at 2% in the first principal maturity year of 2023, and they range up to 3.5% in the final maturity year of December 2037. And then the bonds maturing December 2026 and later are callable beginning December 15, 2025. So you have 2 items at your seats. You have the Spear Financial summary of the bid results and their recommendation to accept the successful low bid of Robert Baird. You also have from Bond Counsel Chapman & Cutler the final bond ordinance. That would have all the final results in there of the successful bidder, Robert Baird. This chart here just shows the final results. The left side graph was just using the estimate information that we were using from March. The right graph is the actual information that has the new adjusted debt service based on the Baird bid and the new sizing. So based on the information that you have in the final proposed ordinance. And what you see here is this also reflects the debt service net of the $750,000 in permit fees that are going to be used to pay the initial debt service. So the City Council previously said that the $750,000 in permit fees for the hospital and Laurel and Western development would be used to pay the first interest. So that is net and not shown on this graph. So what you see is just 3 years with a small amount of yellow above the red line. That is the only incremental debt service now that will need to be absorbed from the operating fund. So you can see that there's going to be very little impact of the bond issue on the operating fund that needs to be absorbed in the operating budget. Other than that, it can be accommodated with the one-time permit fees and the debt capacity that exists within the current 2.2 million debt service that's within the water fund budget now. So very good news. And then with the resizing, the debt does go through FY 2038. And then that yellow that you see in the later years, that's about $800,000 in level debt service, and that will continue through 2038. But you can see in those later years, there is sufficient bond capacity still available in the water fund for additional capital improvements and infrastructure in the water utility. So after a few years, there is still room for capital in the water fund.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Just want to acknowledge, if I could, Bond Counsel Chapman & Cutler financial advisor, Spear Financial. Dan Forbes from Spear Financial is here. They do an amazing amount of work for us on the issue. Chapman and Cutler drafted the bond ordinance that you have before you. And then I will just turn it over to you to consider approval.
It's nice to see hard work, planning, thrift, and all the other virtues rewarded.
And luck.
And good timing.
And good luck. Comments, questions from the council? Jed?
Hi. At the conclusion of this, we'll have $58 million in debt. Is that correct? And do you see any additional debt in the next few years, either debt retirement and reissuance of debt or new projects that are going to come on board that would require debt?
Currently, we have no additional bond issues program for the next few years. There is a small amount of financing that the Cemetery Commission is considering for a project that they have at the cemetery that may come before the City Council in the next year. I don't see that being large enough for a bond issue. It would probably be bank financing. But that's the only borrowing that currently is being considered.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments, questions? Any comments or questions from the audience regarding this? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council and ask for a motion to grant final approval of the bond ordinance pursuant to the auction that occurred today, May 15th. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. This is a roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler?
Aye.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Newman?
I'd like to recuse myself, please.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Tack?
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Aye.
Alderman Moreno?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
7 yea, 1 recusal. Motion carries.
Thank you. I'm from the School of Recusal, where I like to know what they're all about. And Mr. Newman has informed me that he works for a financial firm which was a bidder.
I'm not sure if they bid, but I just would prefer to not be involved in the vote.
Okay.
Which I think has happened in the past.
All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is continuing with council comments, is the Lake Forest Marketing Campaign Committee. And Susan Banks, Communications Manager, and Prue Beidler have some show and tell.
We're delighted to be before you tonight. I guess, so my team is over there and I'm here. And I know you've all been sitting for a while, so, but we are, I think all of you know, I'm incredibly enthusiastic about this, and we're going to be rolling out some new things for you tonight. Before we do that, let me just be sure, and I have to be honest with you, I am assuming that you read the write-up, and I'm not going to go over it piece by piece because I'm pretty sure you did, and we will be happy to answer any questions. I had actually previously some questions about the numbers in here, because there seem to be some, and we may have, there may have been some misunderstanding about the timeframes that we were talking about. So let me just clarify that as quickly as I can. So the entire, and you got an email about this today, but the entire marketing budget is $105,000 for the fiscal years 2018, 19, and 20. So just so you know, that's the period of this. That won't necessarily divide 35 a year because we're front loading it a little bit with the work we're doing now with the consultant and so on. But you've approved that. Previously, I believe. $49,992 is the requested amount for the contract with JWC Media, and that's the publishers of Sheridan Road, and we can talk to you a little bit. And again, in the write-up, it explained why this particular journal is hitting the sweet spot of some of the people that we're particularly hoping to have give us a second look here. So the full amount of that, which is it's a 3-year contract, the full amount covers 24 print ads and 1 free editorial article, which we'll see in June, actually. So, so that 49, and financially, Elizabeth explained to Susan, who explained to me that we have to, because it's a contract, we have to vote for the whole thing now, but it will be spent on an annualized basis, which is $16,664, and that covers 8 print ads and I think it's, Susan, it's full page print, is that right? Yeah. And so that's what we've, and you're going to see some samples of some stuff we're going to be doing. But I did want to make it clear that not only how this fits in as part of our 3-year campaign, that we will be showing up in this journal during these 3 years. We will be doing other journals as well, and I think you see that here. In the materials, we're going to be doing cranes. If you look at your document that was here in front of you on the second page, the little ticks, so this is, we had an intern take a look at Lake Forest real estate purchases and where people were coming from. So you see the state breakdowns on the left, but on the right, you see the city breakdowns from Illinois. And you'll see the biggest number is people moving within Lake Forest, the 147, and then the next one is Chicago. Now Sheridan Road doesn't cover Chicago, but other magazines that we will be using will for our print campaign. 31 from Lake Bluff. Evanston jumped out at me, actually. That looked like an interesting number. They wouldn't be covered by this, but we may look at them in some other way. But all the little tick marks are communities that do get the Sheridan Road. So unlike Forest and Bluff, which is specific to these 2 cities, that Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, Sheridan Road really does the North Shore, and we think that's a pretty good sweet spot for us. Besides young professionals in the city who may be looking to move for the first time, so that gives you a little bit of the data. We specifically asked for that to kind of amplify our views of what we're expecting. So I'm happy to answer questions about what was in the write-up, but to be honest with you, what I'd really rather have you do is hang on to the questions, unless there are a question about the numbers, and go ahead and let Phil Gator, our consultant from Brandstorm, and Susan show you what we've got to show you. I would also say, and Mayor Lansing, I called you today, I forgot to mention, I would love to bring this forward a little more often. So, maybe a small update once a month or so. And I think one of the things that I heard from people recently was that although we have a sense that it's going along just fine and we're, it's timely and so on, if we don't keep you in touch, one of the big points of this campaign is having not just the volunteers in the city and city staff and so on be advocates for this, but the whole community. And if we don't talk about it and update people on what to look for and so on, it's hard to expect people to be advocates. So if you feel like you're going to hear from me a little too often, I won't always talk this long, but I will always talk this enthusiastically, I'm pretty sure. So Phil and Susan, why don't you take it away, and then we'll have time for some questions afterwards after you see where we're going with this. And if it looks like Phil is here in double vision tonight, Phil, you explain that. He is.
Well, I would like to just introduce my identical twin brother here. And he's going to be my beautiful assistant, because I do have to walk over to the screen here to take you through some of the copy points that we'd like to suggest to you. So with my brother here, I always feel I'm beside myself. Thank you. I'll be here all night. So this is the Welcome Home campaign, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So Welcome Home, we're proud to announce we're in full development on many aspects of it. And we want to take you through just a smattering of where we are with this campaign. So next slide, please. The notion is we want to surround our audiences with marketing. And the marketing is going to be multimedia, in the sense that we're going to have a big digital footprint here. We are going to try and surround the respective audiences with messaging that plays off this notion of welcome home. Because welcome home is multifaceted in the sense that it works not only for existing people that live here and call Lake Forest home, it's also for prospective purchasers of homes, prospective businesses that want to call Lake Forest home. Because we want to, first and foremost, make sure that these prospective buyers, so to speak, see Lake Forest as a unique environment, a unique city, and basically highlight the surprising elements that when you start looking at Lake Forest, we're proud of all the things that are forthcoming and we know about Lake Forest, but there's many, many things when you start ticking off the boxes, like Ellowa Farms, that we can actually say, this is something very special and unique, not only in the North Shore, but actually in the country. So these are great, powerful elements that we want to touch on when we do the marketing campaign. So this is a single-minded thought. Welcome Home, we want it to be taken on as a vanguard for not only the marketing materials, but by the people here in the room. This is a movement, and we want people to really embrace it and be involved in it, as Prue said. Involved in it in many different ways, from taking it to heart, using the materials that I'm about to present, and really getting this message out there. The print allows us to reach a broader audience, it just does. The good news is that we've actually made great strides to create a very cost-effective campaign. I'm going to take you through some interactive digital media, which actually, in terms of there's no media cost associated with it. So the print cost is actually going to be, I think, very, very reasonable in comparison to the rest of the materials that we're going to be producing here. And it is a 3-year plan, so this isn't going to be a launch that explodes. It's going to be a drip feed that gradually seeps into the psyche of the people who we want to reach, existing members of this town, but also the people that come in and who start to say, there is something going on in Lake Forest. And we want to change perceptions, and those perceptions will take a little bit of time. That's why we have a 3-year plan. Next slide, please. So I'm going to take you through some pieces, and this is an interactive piece that we're very proud of. And this is going to be a piece that will be usable by certain areas of the city, specifically the retail environment, the real estate environment, and the corporate environment. And what I'm going to show you, Paul, if you go next, is a sample. This is going to be the front cover, and this will be emailable and downloadable on the website. And it is also going to be in a co-op effort with our local businesses. For instance, you can see here Berkshire Hathaway. Anywhere you see an underline will be clickable and will be an immediate link to that specific area's website. So for instance, where you see the word history there, if you click on the word history, that will be an automatic link to the Historical Society. So all the way through this document, we're going to be hyperlinked and cross-referenced and cross-linked to every aspect of the city, including our website. Also, Berkshire Hathaway, when you click on the logo, that will take you to Berkshire Hathaway's homepage, showing you and featuring the current homes on the market here in Lake Forest. So it's an interactive piece which is going to be very cost effective for us to put out there and be able to be used by any certain members of the community. Paul, if you go to the next one, I'll show you a couple of samples. So here's one on education. So if you click on Lake Forest, that would go to the school district. And when you click on that, the homepage for the school districts will come up. But I've also loaded in all the schools here, which again, you can click on any of those underlined and you will be taken to the specific school's homepage. So this is a very usable document. This is the open lands. So this land is your land. This will allow us to click directly to the open lands and see all the benefits and features of the open lands. And I also dropped in and explore the parks, a link to Parks and Recreation. So this document is currently, I think it's 12 pages deep, and each page is going to be usable. You can actually reorder the way you want the document to be delivered as well. So Paul, I believe there's one more. So here's for instance, on a unique college town. So this is a link to what's going on at Lake Forest College. So here again, we see what's happening on campus. That's actually a direct link to Lake Forest College's what's going on page on their homepage. And again, whomever is involved as the cooperative will have their presence here with a fully clickable logo taking us to their particular page. Of course, the Conway Farms corporate corridor is very important to the growth of the city, and we have a specific page here where each of these logos, and this is just a sampling of the companies calling us home, will take us to that corporate entity's homepage. And you also see the waving bear there. Hi, folks. Paul, next one. As we drive around town, there are, I believe, Sue, correct me, three posters which we want to utilize to start to drip feed this message out there. And I want to show you a couple of posters, which will be, which is the nearest venue to here? Across the street. Okay, we can't miss it. So, Paul, if you click on it. You can see here, very simple message, home is where the lake meets the forest. Welcome home. We want people to start seeing welcome home around town, and the more they say it, the more they feel it, the more we believe that this is going to become a movement. And here's another one, safety has found a home here. Safety is is one of the pillars of this community, and we want to make sure that people recognize that. Paul? Print. These are some examples of the print that we would like to do. Again, we are reaching out to those North Shore suburbs that Prue referenced, from the city, Evanston, and some specific towns that we've identified as being, I don't want to call it hotspot, but a hotspot of interest in the sense that we can actually see that people have considered Lake Forest. So we want to bolster that as a thought. So here are some sample print ads. 30 million. It's getting late. 30 miles from Chicago, a million miles from what you expect. Welcome home to the passion and purpose of great living. And again, I chose images that express and shows some of the elements of this community that are unique and different. Next, please. Safety has found a home here. Welcome home to the passion and purpose of great living. We are proud to say we are one of the safest communities in the country. Lake Forest, welcome home. Next. Europe is 30 miles north of Chicago. When you see the renovations going on in the city, it's actually, I love the south of France, and there are some aspects where I go, oh my goodness, I really feel like I'm part of some European town. And I think that's something we can be proud of, and I think that's something that is very, very distinctive to Lake Forest and actually living in Lake Forest. This you probably can recognize as the alleyway. I don't know, is it officially called the alleyway, Bob? Do we call this the alleyway?
We can.
We can call it. Let's call it the alleyway. Blink and you'd think you'd been transported to a corner of a French market town. Welcome home to the passion and purpose of great living. Again, the aim of this campaign is to make people rethink Lake Forest, and part of that is by telling them things that they don't necessarily know, rather than telling them the things that they think that they know. Got that one? I think I've got that one. Next one, please. Lake Forest is in our nature. Miles and miles of free and open space are really vital to this town, and it's also one of the things that define us. And the great work that John Centel and Open Lands are doing is just one of the treasures, as was used earlier, which delineate this city as being an incredible place to call home. So here's a picture. John, do you know whereabouts this is?
It's like Shaw Prairie.
Shaw Prairie, there we go. I love that place. Where else can you find miles of trails and acres of unspoiled open lands to explore? Nature. It's in our nature. Next, please. Just some samples of some of the way in which we're starting to pull the branding elements into the publications that we already have. Here's a dialogue. And I also wanted to point out something to you as a subtle design element. I was playing with the notion of a green border at the top representing oaks and the forest, and then this is water and the lake. So it's like a subliminal use of just to kind of reinforce the name. So Lake Forest. Next, please. Some direct marketing samples. Is that going? Okay, here we go. This is a portrait postcard, and it just says "Welcome Home." And this would be going in a package with our real estate activities. So if you're prospective home buyer, and you're going through Berkshire Hathaway as part of the package that they prepare for you, including the interactive PDF and some other elements. We would give them a postcard, which would be, and this is only suggested at the moment, take this postcard to any store for 10% off. Welcome home. You came for home, now discover the lifestyle, the lake, the safety, the schools, the community, the arts, the fun, the college, the shopping, the history, the homes. Lake Forest. Welcome. Oh, welcome home fell off here. I think it must be on the floor here somewhere, I can't see it. And then this is one of the venues that we took the show to show was actually at the Lake Forest College. And the number one thing that the students reacted to was the venues around town where they could actually get things off and offers. So we created a postcard that eat and shop for 10% off. Again, just a sample. Talking to every existing student and incoming students to make them feel part of the welcome home. And I was really happy to hear the Lake Forest presentation talking about this new program they're doing to invite people into their homes, because that plays beautifully into the campaign. Next, Paul. Again, just some more samples of it. This one is aimed at the notion of shopping here. This one is a corporate version. You came for the job, now stay for the lake, and etc. An educational one, and then another real estate one. You came for the house. So let's move on. Video. We contracted Carl Steitler Video, and I think many of you have seen the documentary style video. Well, what we decided to do was create for want of a better word, a more commercial approach to it. So this was in conjunction with Carl, a script I wrote to kind of get across this notion of Lake Forest, take another look at it. So Paul, if you want to just hit play there. Is that going? Just click on the...
There's an amazing arts community on the shores of a great lake, with 2 symphonies and a thriving theater life. A true college town, rubbing shoulders with a nationally ranked school system. A place that corporate America looks to for dynamic living and working. A town smack in the middle of 2 great Midwestern cities, with 2 international airports. A city where bears freely roam and dogs have a place to play. A community of magnificent estates and homes of every conceivable size. A market square with restaurants, shopping, and energy. More than 800 acres of free and open space to explore the surrounding beauty of nature. Or take on the 29 miles of trails to hike, run, and bike away the days. A place that welcomes people home to the passion and purpose of great living. Lake Forest, Illinois. Yes, Lake Forest. Welcome home.
So again, we wanted to paint a picture where people say, where is this place? And there are some obviously subliminal nods to the fact that this is Lake Forest, but all those facts there were written to try and imbue this feeling of, oh, I want to visit there. And Stanford, I think you were sat on the table when we actually created this. It was at the strategic planning meeting recently, and we were asked to do a mission statement. And I was obviously immersed in the campaign here, so I wrote that script there. I mean, pretty much it's verbatim from what we wrote that day, just as a footnote. Anyway, Paul. So the package, so to speak, is going to be available for the real estate market, corporate, and retail. And that will be in the form of videos, which can be used as URL links in emails, on websites, and used on social media as well. The interactive PDF, cooperative interactive PDF, the direct mail pieces, a doormat. We're actually in the process of creating a doormat which just says welcome home. And part of the cooperative nature of this is the real estate agents will be handing over a welcome home mat to people who purchase a home in Lake Forest as a nice. So people will see the campaign right on their doorsteps. And then other things. There are some other guerrilla marketing things that we will be developing and bringing you up to speed with as we go here. So do you want to move on? I believe there's the map there. That doormat. That's just an artist's rendition, so to speak. So I think with that, we can probably take some questions.
Bob, I don't know how much time you had in mind, or Mayor Lansing, but if there are questions, we'd be happy to.
You want suggestions?
Sure.
Sure.
Could you go to that, like that third or fourth slide where you showed the businesses?
Yeah.
The interactive one that had the.
What number?
Yeah.
Just keep going back, Paul.
Yeah, it's like the third or fourth slide you had.
It was on the PDF.
That one.
Yeah, this might be might be granular, but there's no mention of Abbott.
This at the moment is still it being built.
I could give you some, like, more brand name companies and stuff, like Abbott, for instance. Reynolds Consumer Products, a Reynolds Wrap company, Brunswick, companies that people, if you're looking like, whoa, Brunswick is there, I didn't know that. Whoa, some of those are.
This is still being built out, this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, but it's good. No, it's good.
Fine.
It's good.
Yeah, we'll gladly take any suggestions on that.
Yeah.
I see where Berkshire Hathaway is mentioned in those materials. Is that part of advertising that they're paying for, or why do we select them versus other realty agents?
It was only for example, and we happened to use Berkshire Hathaway because Deborah Fisher was on the committee, so we used it as an example. So,
were you going to offer it to all the
Yes.
realty agents?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
That's
each
the point.
has it.
In fact, we have a real estate meeting
Okay, it's
coming
tailored
up.
to each realty
Co-branded.
agent. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And the corporations will get it, can have it as well, and
Yeah.
yeah. Jed, what was your?
Having been part of Gorton, they're working aggressively to expand their brand out into beyond our community to other communities around here. And I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for them to partner in this process to build on what you're doing and maybe use Gorton to help you in what you're trying to achieve. So maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
See, this is organic, and I think part of the process of involving the community is I want those hands to go up and say, well, we want a part of it. Can we have an interactive page, for instance? So there are all things we can do.
Mm-hmm. So along with the Berkshire Hathaway theme, are people going to pay to have links on this website? No.
That was not the intention, but I still think that could possibly be something we could discuss. I mean, I don't see that as being, I mean, we wanted this to be a campaign from the city, which is embraced by the corporations and the businesses that can use it. So as soon as we put a price on it, it might be something that stops that from being more organic.
And then to add to Jed's comment, I see a lot of organizations that are represented up there, and I would strongly suggest that you contact those organizations to see how they're being represented in this ad campaign. And I think it's wonderful, and that they would all certainly embrace it. For example, when you're talking about Gorton doing their own branding, when you're talking about open space in Lake Forest, there isn't a direct mention that it's a private land trust that supports this. And I know that Lake Forest Open Lands has struggled over the years to be a separate entity from the city so that people realize that, but for private donations, these 800 acres of preserved space wouldn't exist. So, and it's not just open lands, but I think a lot of organizations might want a particular message to be in this. So I just think as a courtesy, you should be checking with them.
I agree with that, but I think the one thing to remember here is the target audience. And the target audience. So the message to the target audience is there's a ton of open space here for you to explore. And I think the connection to the open lands, and we have the URL links and such like, is where I think that message becomes to fruition. Because I think if this becomes a vehicle where we put out too much information on each of the elements, I think it could become unwieldy. So for me, the salient point for open lands is it's here and it's yours. And then we would work with open lands to build those bridges.
So the link, on that open lands page, then the two links there, one is to Lake Forest Open Lands Association. I mean, that's where open lands, we would count on Lake Forest Open Lands to represent exactly what they do, however they want to do it, because that's the go-to open lands. That's the logical place to do it, and then we're going to have the Parks and Rec. So, and I would hope that all of our organizations, I mean, we have a picture in there of the wonderful Hughes Studio Theater, but I would hope that ultimately, remember that this is where we are now, but that ultimately there would be pages that could get you to anything you wanted to, including just our home website in Lake Forest. So we want people to be, certainly young people looking for a place to come with their young families. They're going to do everything online. They're going to come to us, but not until, they'll come to us after somebody has sat for hours looking at the housing stock and looking at the school ratings and looking at the, they do that first. And then if they're intrigued, that's when, maybe they'll be visiting a friend and they'll drive by and see a house and say, gee, that looks nice. But most of it's this research that they do online first, figuring out what it is that, so we're hoping to just entice them, to get them to go a little deeper and to make it a little bit easier for them to find out the stuff that they want to find out. And just let people know what's true. I mean, what's amazing.
I agree
I think
with all
you're
of
right.
that, but
Let's have the organizations.
I just think talk to the organizations as to how you're representing them in this video might be just a good public relations maneuver.
We have been talking along the way to all the names you've mentioned here, by the way.
And then I just had one other quick comment, and that is, as part of your campaign, and this probably doesn't relate to what you're doing for the city, which is marvelous, but there is, this county is also doing marketing and had a grand success recently in bringing Caterpillar to Deerfield that we're all aware of. And so as part of our marketing campaign, I would suggest that perhaps we take a look at Partners of Lake County and being a member of that organization as well, because they can also promote our community to a lot of corporate headquarters and things. So that's a suggestion that I just want to throw out there for consideration. I think it's, there is some fee associated with it, I think, to support Partners of Lake County, but that's tangible success that we have seen, and we might want to consider becoming part of that as well. Thank you.
Can I just make, you want to go ahead?
Please.
I hope you see one of the risks of this already. This is already morphed from a marketing of Lake Forest as a place to live to how can we market everybody who's associated with Lake Forest, which I think is exactly the wrong thing to do. So although I think it's good that people can look and see who's here, because that may be appealing, I don't think we should put, at least initially, a lot of emphasis on promoting any of those people. We're not promoting them. We're promoting Lake Forest.
I just wanted to jump on Prue's comment about Parks and Rec being on the page and the importance of the dog park. I know it seems very granular, my even bringing it up now, but so many people find that to be
That's a good point.
a very important asset in the city. So I'll take the chance to stress it as a but wish to be dog owner.
Isn't the dog,
Me
the
too.
dog park, is
Forest Preserve.
That's Forest Preserve, but that's fine.
It is. Sorry.
No, but we have access to it.
But it's in Lake Forest.
It is in Lake Forest. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Yeah, young people
Great.
would love that. I mean, that's.
I think that's great to know. Yeah, good idea.
Well, good. Any other comments, thoughts from the council? Any comments or thoughts from the public in the audience? Seeing none, I think I will bring this back now to the formal action that's being requested, Alderman Beidler, which is I'll ask for a motion to award a 3-year contract for advertising pertaining to the Lake Forest marketing campaign in the amount of $49,992 over 3 fiscal years, 18, 19, and 20, to JWC Media, and to waive purchasing requirements for competitive pricing per Administrative Directive 3-5. Is there a second?
Second. Do we have a motion?
Did somebody
I need a
move?
motion.
I'll move.
Move it.
So moved?
Thank you, Judge.
That's okay.
I will second it.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler?
Yes.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Newman?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Tack?
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Aye.
Alderman Moreno?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. Next is the opportunity for citizens to address the city council on non-agenda items. Is there anyone who would wish to speak to council? Seeing none. Next are items for omnibus vote consideration. There are 2, which are the minutes of our last meeting, the first session, the outgoing council, and the second session, the incoming council here. If anybody'd like to remove one from consideration, or we'll move to a discussion, or any discussion. Otherwise, we'll move to a vote.
So moved.
Second?
All those, this is a roll call vote.
Alderman Beidler?
Aye.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Newman?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Tack?
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Aye.
Alderman Moreno?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
8 yea, 0 nay, motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is new business. A request for city council approval of an agreement for professional design services for the Telegraph Metro Station Train Bridge Project. Ask Robert Ells, Superintendent of Engineering for the city, to present this item.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you tonight is a request for approval of a contract between the city and Hanson Professional Services to provide preliminary engineering. Sorry. Thank you. To provide preliminary engineering for the Telegraph Road Metro Station pedestrian underpass. The purpose of this project is twofold. The first being to improve overall safety out at the train station by eliminating the existing at-grade crossing that allows riders to freely move back and forth across the tracks out there to get to the side of the track they need to be on. If this project were to go forward and be constructed, that grade crossing would be permanently eliminated. As some of you know, this project has been around for a number of years. Back in 2012, the city actually entered into the first design for what was then called the pedestrian underpass tunnel. And that's because when the city first embarked on this project, there was a strict mandate from Metra that any project out there would not interfere with train traffic. There would be no interruption to the 92 or so trains a day that use those 2 tracks out there. So when the city started the design process, there were 8 or so options that were suggested by the consultant. City council subsequently reviewed all that, picked a concept that was an actual tunnel, a 14-foot diameter steel tube, if you will, was going to be jacked and bored under the live tracks, and all construction would take place under the live railroad tracks. As the memo and the write-up, you have details through the design process because of some issues with the existing soils out there. The price of this project went up. And by the time the design was done, city staff and leadership decided that some value engineering is needed to try and find some alternatives to get this cost back down. So what happened after that was the city manager and the former mayor met with Metra leadership and convince them to at least open the discussion of coming up with a design, a simplified design that would require limited scheduled single track outages at the Metro station. They agreed to that, but they wanted some assurances. So last year, the city contracted with Hanson to do a concept study on what's being called the train bridge concept. Train bridge is nothing more than an overpass that you see all over. I believe there's a photo in your packet of Ravinia. Anyone that's been there in the last few years since they finished the train bridge there, you most likely walked right underneath that. That is the look that the new concept would have. What's that? So what we have on the screen now is just the existing site. You can see the, no, that doesn't work either. Okay, the existing station there to the left, the two tracks north and south. This was the original concept, what was nicknamed the Bowl design, because of the massive excavation that was going to take place on the west side of the tracks to allow for the required ADA pathway going down for those riders that are not able to use stairs. That design necessitated a very complex structural system because of the poor soils that are out there. That was the main factor of the cost going up and up and up. So this is a very conceptual plan that shows we're on still on the west side of the track, south of the existing station. With the train bridge concept, we would still need the ADA walkway for people that need that accommodation to get down underneath the tracks. You can see much less excavation, which equates to much less structural requirements to keep the tracks in place. Looking east. And again, I think the best view is the picture of Ravinia. I think that really gives the best reference for what that train bridge would look like. Another one looking northwest. And there's Ravinia. So what would happen under this scenario is there would be scheduled outages. Right now, the Hanson is looking at 2 to 4 scheduled outages, and those outages would be a weekend long. All the railroads would have advance notice that there's going to be only one track in service, so they would have to use the switches they have at various places on their route so that all the trains are on the right track during the construction. So 2 to 4 weekends, and we could have this built. The work could take place underneath once the abutments and the box beams were installed. Metra has agreed to this in concept and principle. They are looking for the city to have preliminary engineering done and have the same concept be proven basically by Hanson that yes, it would be 2 to 4 scheduled outages. At that point, they have expressed that they are willing to sign an official agreement with the city once that was done. So the city asked Hanson for a proposal. A copy is in your packet. The total cost being $281,421 to complete the preliminary engineering, produce a project report that would go to the state. IDOT would review that preliminary engineering, hopefully approve that concept, That would do two things for us. We would go back to Metra, or the city would go back to Metra and give them that information, get them to sign the agreement so the city knows that they have that agreement in place before going into final design. Also, having the state approve the design would make us eligible for federal aid funding in the future for construction of the project. Does anybody have any questions?
Council, Michelle?
Two questions. First of all, I don't have a sense of the exit or approach from the east side of the pedestrian path. Would it be similar?
Where it exits on the east side over by McDonald's?
Yes.
Okay, it would, let's see what we got for a picture here. You would, right where the stairway, just south of the existing stairway, this is what you would be looking at right there. You would be walking basically at grade from Gloucester Crossing and walk underneath the tracks. From there, you would be able to, well, you would take stairs down, go under, take the stairs back up, or the ramps if you needed that accommodation.
Yeah, he had one there.
There you go.
Oh, thank you.
So each side is stairs and ramps on each
Got it.
side. But this is much less excavation than the original bowl design. That was massive.
Thank you.
Was going to look really nice, but it was very expensive.
The second question, and it might be too early to be specific, but could you talk about drainage? When I hear tunnel, I think, or underground, I think water collecting and.
Certainly, and there would be accommodations for that. A pump station would be put in, so the water would be collected at the lowest point, go in through a pump and into the existing storm sewer system on site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a couple, go ahead. Drew.
No, go ahead.
I have a couple, I have a couple questions. I don't understand all the financial aspects of this.
Thank you.
So the first project that we were anticipating, we did the engineering at a cost of about $280,000. Who paid for that?
The original design was the preliminary engineering, or what's called the phase one, was paid for this by the city. That was $208,000. And
Yeah,
that
but maybe I'll ask my whole question, so then you won't have to, you can take it maybe on a macro basis. So that cost 208. My sense is, I believe, based on what I read then, but that project was gonna cost us about $12 million.
Correct.
Okay. How was that financed? Don't answer it yet. Anyhow, we scrapped that, based on, Metra saying that they would be willing to shut down the track. So we come up with this new design, and the cost for the engineering, initial engineering, is going to be $280,000. How is that paid for? And then am I right in believing that the cost then for the new project would be $2 million, not $12 million? How would that be paid for? And what would be the trigger mechanism for making that happen, meaning the construction?
Okay. Yes, the original cost for the phase one was $208,000. That was preliminary engineering. If you have the memo that's in your packet, after that, there was the final engineering. That was $439,000. There was also additional design work done in the amount of $195,000. All of that money was paid 80% by the federal government and 20% by the city. That was under
By the
federal.
state?
By the city.
City.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. And that was under high-speed rail grant money that the city had received.
Okay.
The savings projected right now under the new train bridge concept is 2 to 2.5 million. So the final cost of the new one would be right around the $10 million mark, just under $10 million.
That was a big miss on my part.
Mhm.
2 million savings.
And that,
Oh, 2 million savings.
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
2 million
okay,
savings,
okay,
2 to
okay.
2.5 million is what.
Okay, so where do we get that money from?
Well, the money for this design, what's in front of you today, for the preliminary design, that would be paid for at 100% by state money. We also received money from the state of Illinois back in 2010 for this project, for design and/or construction of this project, and that money still exists. So that would be, this design effort would be paid for the $281,000 by the state. There is no cost to the city of Lake Forest.
Jack, can I interrupt on that? Is it paid by or reimbursed?
Reimbursed, I'm sorry. It would be reimbursed. The city will put the money out, and it would be reimbursed at 100%.
So what is the likelihood, I guess where I'm kind of going with this thing is, you know, we spent $208,000 and essentially got nothing for it. And now we're going to spend 280. I guess it's not our money, but it's doing something for preliminary engineering for a $10 million project. And I have trouble getting my arms around A, what's the approval process for allowing this to eventually come to complete or start or completion? What has to be put in place? You know, I guess I was wondering whether we're putting $280,000 at risk. I guess we're not, because we've got funding at that. But where the heck where does this $10 million come from?
At this point, we do not have the $10 million. We do have money for design, but the city would be responsible for pursuing grant funding for the actual construction of the project. Same as it was with the first design. There has never been a pot of money set aside for construction. The city would be responsible for finding that money.
I'm not, okay, I want to believe.
Alderman-
How long does that take?
Well, we've been, we're in a catch-22 right now because we have applied for grant funding in 3 or 4 different categories, if you will, or pots of money.
Uh-huh.
And part of the problem is that we have decided to move away from the first design, moving to the second design. We can't actually file formally for grant money with a new design until we get to the next phase.
Mhm.
But there are 3 pots of money that we're looking at, all at the federal level. I just got an email today, most recently, about what may or may not be available under the new President Trump infrastructure policy as well. But this project, I guess to go maybe to the heart of your question, this project will not proceed without federal grant funding. And it ebbs and flows based on what the priorities are out of Washington and Springfield in terms of what they want to do or not do in terms of rail safety issues. So we've got our fingers crossed. We were working very closely with Congressman Dold's office on this, and then he didn't get. We've been working very closely with Congressman Schneider's office now, but he's got to sort of get back up to speed on this. But they're all, former Mayor Schoenheider have been working with a number of both state and federal legislators to make sure that they understand that this is front and center on their docket to take care of. I don't know if that answers the question.
If I can, though, follow up on Jack's questions and your comments, Bob. We're saying what we're asked to approve today, the funding for the study, the $281,000. There, we, in essence, already have the funds available and they're secured. When you say it's from the state, I get a little concerned, but it's secured funding that we can reimburse from that fund and we're pretty confident that that reimbursement would occur.
Yes, because the state can't use that funding for anything else other than this project.
And then you say, once this engineering study is done, which is essential then to go forward to the next step, to look for this other funding for the 10 million, if it's a $10 million project. Is what you're telling the council that the intention would be that the project would be fully paid for by federal and state and not require funding from the city, or do we expect funding from the city?
Well, it varies, and that's a great question, and quite candidly, it varies on what kind of funding you get. There is some, if we get an earmark, for example, it could be 100%. If we get more high-speed rail money, it could be an 80-20. And so at that point in time, once we know what the grant is that we would be eligible for and potentially fund it, then it would come back to the city council for final determination as to whether we want to proceed or not. But unfortunately, there's multiple pots that have different rules for each of the pots, and until we know where the money is coming from, I can't give you a direct answer as to what that obligation will be.
But Bob, any money we spend now is for something that we have to have before the project could proceed, assuming the money shows up.
That is correct.
So we continue to want this, we continue to worry about the safety there. So getting this done now is important, even if it sits on a shelf for a while. I mean, I guess is that, but, and if some infrastructure money, which we hope will happen at the federal level, becomes available, then we're good to go. Then we're ready to, that's the, I think, urgency of getting
Yes,
this done
that's
now.
exactly right. You cannot apply for grant money for construction until you have design done, preliminary design done, approved by the State Department of Transportation.
It seems like there's no reason not to do
Not
this.
to do it. Well,
Right.
the money.
Right.
I just have a
We have the
question
money.
about the funding. I see 281,000 is listed under a column called State IJN, which is explained down below as the Illinois Jobs Now program. You mentioned earlier it can't be spent on anything else, but it doesn't seem like design work is maybe jobs related. So I see from earlier it was switched from a high-speed rail bucket to this Illinois Jobs Now bucket. So how secure is this money?
Well, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong. These are federal dollars that are being administered by the state of Illinois. And so it's more, they're passing it through, in this case, to us.
Right, but are other people asking at the same time, do we get, left out in the cold by any stretch of the imagination?
No, because the award was made by the federal government to the state government for this project, and then they just administer it on behalf of the federal
This
government.
specific project?
Correct.
was the
The
application,
money is
yeah.
set aside for this project for Lake Forest.
So it's money in the bank that is designated.
I don't know where the state keeps their money, or if they have any really, but on paper,
I understand your uncertainty about
Exactly. I mean,
this. I get that.
on paper, we have.
Where is the money? Show me the money.
We have $593,000 on paper for this project under the IGN category. That was something the state did. We weren't even notified. It was originally high-speed rail. Somewhere in how the state moves their money around, it ended up in this bucket. The paperwork has already been sent to the state through our liaison at Lake County, and that document he sent down, it's a project programming document, and what it's doing is saying, okay, we have this money on account for this project. We now have a proposal from the consultant for this amount. Please move that money, the $291,000, into the active, and that document is down there for signature right now. We had, before that, checked with them to make sure the 593 was still on account, and that was verified. It's still there under IJN for this project for the city of Lake Forest.
So I see from this accounting that after the 281 got funded, there's still a balance of 311. How might that be utilized?
That will be utilized for the final design, for phase 2 detailed design. What they're doing now is what it's commonly called the phase 1. It's a partial design of the project, and a lot of it hits on environmental things they have to go through. The consultant has to go through all the federal and state clearances for special ways, biological, cultural, there's a whole pages and pages of requirements, wetlands, things like that.
So if I
All that
understand you,
has to
there's
be
more
done.
engineering to be done. Is 311 sufficient to cover that next level?
We do not know that at this point.
So, I mean, do we have exposure there?
We do.
Okay.
But at this point, it's tough to ask them for an amount, how much the final design will cost before.
Okay,
they've
so,
started
I mean, we would be able
preliminary.
to see ahead of time where the possible liability would be and the funds that might be available to defray that?
Once this preliminary engineering is done, it goes to the state. They may or may not have comments, request a few little changes. Once that's done and they approve it, then the next step will be to hire a consultant to do the final detailed design. And we'll get proposals at that point, and we'll know about how much that is. I don't know if 311 will be enough. If I had to guess right now, I'd say it may be a little more than that. So whatever the difference is, the city would have to pay that amount.
Just to be clear on the sequence, to apply for the grant, we need the preliminary Phase 1 engineering. Is that correct? Or do you need both Phase 1 and Phase 2, final engineering?
Depends, as Mr.
Depends on the
Kiley
bucket you're in.
explained. It
Right,
depends.
but I think often what can happen is that final engineering often comes out of the grant money if you get it and you decide to move ahead.
There are grant programs that will pay for Phase 2 engineering.
The devil's in the detail.
Devils are dancing everywhere.
Want money in the pocket, though.
Well, what makes me nervous about this is Metro. Where does Metro play a role in here? Because our packet said Metro has not yet signed the memo of understanding, but has given assurances that they support the new design concept, including limited track outages. I mean,
Metro owns the
this
tracks.
makes me uncomfortable.
Makes a lot of people
Because this
or
doesn't
has made
sound
them
like much of a
uncomfortable.
commitment to me from Metra. I mean, even if the funding, I guess, is there, that they would go ahead with this. So, you know, I'm just, this is also sort of up in the air and dependent on so much, including Metra, who's given us what kind of assurances?
Well, they were actually, Don Orsino was here and made the assurance to the city council. I think we've asked them to enter into a memorandum of understanding, and they said until the Phase 1 design is completed and they know how many outages there will actually be, they can't go on record because while they own it, they also have to provide Canadian Pacific with access and Amtrak with access, and so they need to know the details before they go to their other partners, if you will, and say this is what is going to happen. There is no assurance until you actually have some legally binding agreement, but I do know that Metra is very much in favor of this project, and so they want to see it happen. I think they were as shocked and surprised as we were by the cost creep as it went up. And I think the reason, at least that they reported to the mayor and I when we met with them, is that they would like to see this happen in a lot of other locations in the Chicago area as well. And they recognize that unless they're willing to work with the local communities, that they're not going to be able to accomplish their goal and get that separation of pedestrian and train traffic.
Well, it certainly is an important safety measure to take, and I certainly understand that. It just seems to me that this is backwards. You should have some sort of memo of understanding before we're spending money on the project. And it also seems to me that some sort of memo of understanding could be fashioned that's general enough that might satisfy them. Outages of, not to exceed a certain amount or something like that. Do you think there's any possibility of that?
Well, we've asked, and they said no, other than a letter that they gave us. Other than that, they said, sort of show us how, because the real issue is how many outages there's going to be. While they have been making comments all along about the design, and when we said, the Ravinia style, because they've already approved that design elsewhere on another line, and so on and so forth. But at this point in time, Metra's corporate position is we will not enter into that agreement until we know exactly what the number of outages are.
For what it's worth, Metra is very covetous of its lines and the utilization of them, and I think that they would be very loath to offer anybody something without having first proof of the pudding. And I think that's why the sequencing is as it is, and I think we either decide to bail on this project or try to prove it up to Metro so that they will go for it.
Yeah, that's, I think, well said.
It would certainly be frustrating if we paused it or bailed or whatever, and then there was infrastructure money that we would have been able to, I mean, this seems like a pretty,
I think I said it before, I see no reason
not to.
not to do this.
Well, I mean, it's, yeah.
Take it a step at a time.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, this
money's
is
there.
not uncommon
That's
at all.
And if anybody has any pull with their elected officials, please let us know, because the rules are always changing. I mean, for the last 7 years, we've been going through a situation where in Washington, they've not accepted earmarks. But my understanding is that under the new regime, earmarks are back in play. And so to an earlier question, an earmark could potentially be 100% funding, including phase 2. Whether that happens or not, there's still a lot of discussions that will take place in Washington, I'm sure. So,
Any further questions, comments from the council? If none, questions, comments from the audience on this matter? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve an agreement with Hanson Professional Services for the professional design services for the Telegraph Metro Station Bridge project in the amount of $281,421, and also pursuant to the exception noted in section 9.0K of the city's purchasing directive, authorizing a waiver of bidding for professional services based on existing relationship. This is a roll call vote.
So moved.
Second. The city clerk, please call the roll.
Certainly. Alderman Beidler?
Aye.
Alderman Morris?
Aye.
Alderman Newman?
Aye.
Alderman Rummel?
Aye.
Alderman Tack?
Aye.
Alderman Reisenberg?
Aye.
Alderman Marino?
Aye.
Alderman Bushman?
Aye.
0 nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 8, any additional items for council discussion?
I would like to just mention one quickly. Several meetings ago, we talked about the transfer tax, and taking a look at the time period and taking a look at taking it from one year to 2 years because of the state of the real estate industry in Chicago, and because it essentially wasn't, in my mind, time sensitive, as long as, other than the revenue recognition problem. So I'd like to make sure that that gets on the, I would like to have that on the agenda relatively soon, so make sure we don't forget about it.
okay. Yeah, I know that we are working on some other updates, but we can certainly,
Okay.
Elizabeth, any thoughts as to when? One of the second meeting in June?
Is that part of the broader review that you're doing of the transfer tax? Because I had some comments too, and they
Fine.
suggested that it be
I just
part of
didn't
the
want it
broader
to, I just
review.
didn't want us to forget about it. That's okay.
Yeah, no, work in progress.
Yep, okay.
And along those same lines, the email that I sent around about the utility billing, can we pick that up? I think that we're
That'll be
waiting
on the
to hear
June
from the
agenda.
city attorney on that, and I think Alderman Morris also crystallized that very nicely in his question.
Yep. Absolutely.
No time to rest. There being no further business on the agenda, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. And a
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
One being opposed? We're done. Thank you.
Did that come together?
No, we were basically just